This is the 8th Race Matters Conference, and I really want to give my personal thanks and congratulations to the NACDL for putting on these conferences. Rick Jones, who was the president of the NACDL, was the first one. And this organization has stepped up to try and deal with issues that we all know are there and that many people in this country want to ignore. And so where I'd like to start, let me say this before I begin. There is going to be a lot of stuff in here in this presentation that is traumatic. And so, if you need to walk out, that's fine. I just want to give people, that heads up. And Dr. Crutcher is going to join me on the stage in about 10 minutes. And she's not going to be here for the first 10 minutes. And as we get into it, you will understand why. But she's going to join me very, very quickly here. And so let me just get into it. I don't know if you've ever read this book. William Faulkner is one of the great American authors, and maybe some of you know that he had this dispute with Ernest Hemingway. And Faulkner wrote to Hemingway and said, poor Hemingway, he's never used a word that would send a reader to the dictionary. And then Hemingway wrote back and said, poor Faulkner, does he really think that big emotions come from big words? Well, Faulkner could use simple, direct words as well. The past is never dead. It's not even past. And there are so many attempts to erase what has happened in this country to bring us to today, to bring us to right here where we are. And that attempt to erase that history is dangerous, and it's not going to work. The genie is out of the box. And so all these people going around the country doing this, we're going to ban these books, we're going to prevent teachers from teaching this stuff. Have these people ever dealt with a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old? The quickest way to get a 14-year-old to read something is to tell them they can't. And as I understand it, there's a thing called the internet where you can actually go and get information. So the attempts to ban books, the attempts to suppress information are not going to work. Terrence Crutcher was murdered on September 16, 2016. And that's the police officer that shot and killed him, Betty Shelby. And I will say, I'm going to use the word murder throughout this. I understand there was a trial and Shelby was acquitted. Fine for her. It doesn't change the truth of what happened, because Terrence Crutcher wasn't just killed. He was murdered. Terrence Crutcher was shot with his hands in the air, standing next to the driver's side door of his car. The police came upon the car and actually cleared the car when Mr. Crutcher was away from the car. So they knew there wasn't anything in the car. There was no gun. Right after he was shot, there was speculation that, he was reaching into the car to get something in the car, and that's why Betty Shelby shot him, until the Crutcher family lawyer showed the picture of the car with the window rolled up. And some people have seen this video and said, well, there's something by his foot when he falls down. Could that have been a gun or something that people thought was a gun? No, he had been shot out of his shoes. He was murdered. And this family, the Crutcher family, went through hell, trying to celebrate his life, trying to come to terms with what had happened to him. Terrence Crutcher's parents, his mother is now passed away. This is what his father had to say to the city council. My son was killed because of a flawed system. I would like to introduce now Dr. Tiffany Crutcher. Could you help me welcome her, please? Dr. Crutcher, there was an introduction by the mayor of Tulsa before you got here. And he did a wonderful job of talking about the city, talking about the history here. The question I have for you is, how did he get to be mayor?
Well, first of all,
don't be bashful when you say it.
I will not. Well, first of all, welcome to Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's so nice to have you all here. And excuse my voice, I've been speaking so much over the past several weeks. And just thank you, Jeff. It's truly an honor to be on this stage with you. Wow. And I would be remiss before we jump into truth-telling if I didn't recognize my team who's standing in the back just here supporting me, the team members of the Terrence Crutcher Foundation. Will you all just wave your hand? And I'm not sure if my father, the Reverend Dr. Joey Crutcher, is here. He will be here. But if he's here, will you all just give him a shout out? He is just a hero in my book. He's been through so much. He just left Denver last week, coming from the 10th Circuit in the case of Terrence. We filed an appeal after the city dismissed our case, or a judge dismissed our case. Our case has been sitting on a judge's desk for 4 years. This happened in 2016. We finally, got the case moving. This judge came in and just dismissed the city, dismissed Officer Shelby on the grounds of qualified immunity. We filed for an appeal, finally made it to the 10th Circuit. We brought on a firm called Gibson and Dunn, along with our lead attorney, Demario Solomon Simmons. We argued that case on last Wednesday, and we feel very confident that we will get kicked back down and go through a civil process and hold the officer accountable. And so we're excited about that. And it's the testament of the last words you just heard me say, that in Tulsa, we won't sit by and say it is what it is. We will not accept the system the way it is. And I made a promise 8 years ago this past Saturday, which was the anniversary of the acquittal on May 17th, when she ran to this hotel and was put up in a nice hotel and went to the penthouse suite and started popping bottles, showing no remorse. I made a promise that I would not rest. And when I made that promise, I didn't realize that 8 years later, almost 9 years later, because of the work of those individuals in the back of the room, that we would elect Tulsa's first black mayor. And you all have to clap for that.
But Dr. Crutcher.
And you, and yeah.
How did he get elected?
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm going, Jeff. This is a mayor. He's really unique. He wasn't elected or endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police. Pretty much every mayor is endorsed by the FOP. He wasn't endorsed by the philanthropic industrial complex or the power structures. He was endorsed by the people. And the team you see in the back, my team, what we decided to do when I found myself at City Hall every single Wednesday, dividing my time. I was in Montgomery, Alabama, but I was flying home pretty much every month to fight for my twin. I found myself at City Hall advocating and demanding that they change policies, that they get a de-escalation policy, that they institute an officer of the independent monitor. And, it was just like insanity, doing the same thing over and over, and nothing was changing. So I decided to shift and start base building and knocking on doors, not just during election time, but knocking on doors every single month to simply listen to what the people want, and so we would document all of this feedback and ask people, how do you feel? What do you think? What do you want to see change for your community? And we heard things like, we are tired of the hyper policing. We are tired of people in our community with mental illness being gunned down or being criminalized. We are tired of not having street lights in our community. We want sidewalks in our neighborhood. We want a grocery store. We want for our children to have amenities and extracurricular activities. And so what we did was we brought those issues back and started to advocate around the issues that community cared about. And when a mayor's race came about, and we jumped on the mayor's ballot in 2020, it was another one of my activist friends, Greg Robinson. And for the first time in the history of Tulsa, a black man gained 38% of the vote. That was just the alley-oop. And then here we are 4 years later. Monroe Nichols was a candidate that supported our issues. Disclaimer, we're 501c3. We don't support candidates, but we do advocate around issues. But we saw our issues on the ballot box. And we packed out a church right downtown, right down the street, with close to 1,000 people, with all three candidates, did an accountability session and had community members share their testimonies about those issues, about alternative and crisis response, about turning on the lights in North Tulsa, and all the things. And every candidate said, yes, we would support these issues. We would implement policies around those issues. And so people turned out in August, and the mayor actually led. We forced a runoff, and it was the first time in the history that a runoff took place with the mayor's race, and we found ourselves on the general ballot with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And he was actually, there was a 200 vote split, and he came in first when the polls showed that he was number 3. And so North Tulsa, the black community, was the margin of victory. We went to the runoff, the general election, 2 Democrats. The other Democrat decided to go far, far right, started doing a smear campaign, hired MAGA consultants, and that just didn't go over well. And he found himself winning by a 10-point split, 10 points. And it was because of the people. It was because of the advocacy. It was because of the organizing. So you heard from him, and all of the issues that we care about, we're seeing it. We have an open door policy for the first time. When we were locked out of City Hall, we were demonized by the last mayors. And so that is what I meant when I said I will not rest and we will not sit by and say it is what it is. And I had to learn that justice wasn't a sprint. And I learned the hard way. And I've truly learned that this fight for justice and liberation is truly a marathon. And if this city hasn't learned anything else from me, they've learned persistence, they've learned consistency, and they've learned perseverance. And now we see some light in a place where all 77 counties, Oklahoma, went red for Donald Trump. Tulsa was that little glimmer of hope right there in the center of the state, in the center of the nation, where Tulsa shifted left, a little bit left, that little blue glimmer of hope. And so
the mayor said that something's happening on June 1st.
Yeah.
And understanding that the work of the Terrence Crutcher Foundation, the community work, the consensus building, played a major role in getting him elected. What's happening on June 1st? Yeah,
well, June 1st, you all know, it will be the 104-year anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre. And I just want you all to know, and I know you know, you are on sacred land, and there has been no repair, no respect, no restitution for what happened over 104 years ago. I am a descendant of Rebecca Brown Crutcher, who was a survivor of the 1921 Tulsa Massacre, and really didn't learn about it in school. I went to some of the best schools. I went to school on Greenwood at Carver Junior High. I went to Booker T. Washington, that was open at the time of the massacre. And so we started fighting for reparations. And we connected Terrence's story, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But we started fighting for reparations and doing events, remembrance ceremonies. I can go on and on and on. And because we elected this mayor, the first black mayor, and he didn't run on a platform of reparations, because I don't think he would have won in this city. But what community advocates did was they presented recommendations. There was a commission called Beyond Apology to create recommendations to repair the harm. There's a group called Justice for Greenwood, led by civil rights attorney Demario Solomon Simmons, who presented recommendations, and so many other advocates. And this mayor made an announcement, signed the executive order declaring June 1st as a local holiday, a local day of observance. You can clap for that. It's amazing. But not only that, he will roll out his plan for repair. He has signaled that he will release 40,000 pages or documents that's been under seal. He's signaled that he's going to create a trust that will provide scholarships to descendants, business loans to descendants, grants to the surviving entities. There were 13 churches that survived. He's talking about a victims' compensation fund for the 2 living survivors. I have to say their names. Mother Viola Fletcher, who just turned 111 on May 10th. And Mother Leslie B. Randall, who is 110, and she will be 111 on November the 10th. And so this will be probably one of the most comprehensive reparations plans at the local level that this nation has ever seen. And so this mayor decided to disrupt the inaction of past mayors for the last 104 years. And again, it's because of the organizing and the advocacy of the activists and organizers in this city.
One of the things that I just wanted to say quickly is our purpose in being up here is to ask you to consider the importance of this issue. There are speakers here who are fantastic and who are going to give you tools to address anti-black racism and all kinds of racism in the criminal legal system. And our purpose this morning is to tell you or to share with you why that is so necessary. So I just want to say the folks who are going to be speaking here, y'all are in for a treat. And what they have, you can take back with you. I want to talk a little bit about the Tulsa Massacre. And if you have the opportunity to go over to Greenwood, I know there's a Greenwood Rising event that some people may go to, you will come and see this marker. I know you can't read it in here, but I want to highlight something on this marker. Reports indicate that local authorities provided firearms and ammunition to the mob of thousands of white people who began firing at the black men trying to protect Dick Rowland. So this wasn't just a group of white supremacists who decided to act like this. The leadership of this city was involved, and they provided the weapons and the ammunition to carry out this massacre. So, Dr. Crutcher, can you tell us a little bit about Dick Rowland? Because as you can see from this newspaper article, a Negro delivery boy who gave his name to the police as Diamond Dick, but who was identified as Dick Rowland, was arrested.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the last clip really said it all, but Dick Rowland was just, a community member of Greenwood, a shoeshine boy, and allegedly he attacked a young lady, a teenage girl by the name of Sarah Page. And of course, that's always the story. And he was trying to go to the bathroom. He was, I think, right across the street at the Drexel building. And the doors opened. I think he tripped and bumped into her. She screamed. And here you have the media, the Tulsa Tribune at the time, that put this harmful narrative in the newspaper that essentially incited the riot. Is what they called it at the time. That's what they called it. But we know it was a massacre. And it reminds me so much of current day, how one single lie, one single article, one harmful narrative can destroy a community. I can't help but think about January 6th and how lies incited a 1921 Jim Crow style massacre a riot. It was just the same scene. People in our community, we were triggered looking at what we saw on January the 6th. And so this article in the newspaper, they should be held responsible for what happened in 1921.
These are some images of the massacre, and can you put some context here?
Yeah, I mean, this image, you all saw the video of Terrence. You saw his hands in the air. So much has changed, yet so much has stayed the same. And these are some of the innocent black men of Greenwood, some of them World War I veterans, black veterans who came home, and they were actually held at gunpoint, shot at, and they had to walk from Greenwood to Convention Hall, which was the location of the Klan headquarters. And they were held there. They were tagged. Some of them were put in camps at the fairgrounds. And this picture is so significant. And we've done side by sides of this picture and the picture of Terrence because it was the same police department that shot innocent black men, that held them to gunpoint, that shot in the community indiscriminately, the same police department and city that killed Terrence Crutcher.
This image has always just been so powerful.
Yeah.
The person who wrote on it obviously couldn't spell because they couldn't spell running, but running the Negro out of Tulsa, June 1st, 21.
Yeah. I mean, how could an entire community be leveled out like this? It wasn't just simple guns. It had to be something massive like bombs. And so for the first time in this nation's history, the United States bombed its own land. And it was right here in Tulsa where a community of black people lived, about 14,000 black people. And that's so significant when we think about the harm and the entities and the state sanctioned violence that occurred.
Mass graves, Dr. Crutcher.
Yeah. These are remains of some of the victims of the massacre. And you all probably saw the headlines where the former mayor, G.T. Bynum, after decades of fighting, and as we encroached the 100-year anniversary, the city said, oh, we want to look good. We don't want a negative stain on Tulsa. So let's figure out how we can do something. Even though he said that reparations would be divisive, I don't believe in reparations, even though we know that in the same cemetery, Oaklawn, where his ancestors are, and the Bynum family we know, because we've done the genealogy, owned slaves, he said reparations would be divisive. So he decided that I don't want Tulsa to look bad because I know there's going to be a national and an international spotlight on this city. So let me do something and let me start trying to dig for the remains and see if I can connect some of the descendants to families. I'm not sure if everyone asked for that. I don't think that he understood the re-traumatization that this process has had on the community. And for us, it's really smoke and mirrors because they started to dig. We told them to dig in other places where we've had oral historical accounts of where there's mass graves, and they went and dug up remains that we already knew were there. We knew that there were 16 bodies there. We knew that there were babies there. We knew what the injuries and the insults were, but they did it as smoke and mirrors to pretend that, oh, we've discovered remains. And so they put together a mass graves oversight commission, and that was just like a rubber stamp commission. They did not listen to the recommendations. As a matter of fact, they stopped the dig. And so, and you can go on and on. and on. And I think this new mayor is trying to do it right and resume the digs. But we did find a descendant and a family who's still living, C.L. Daniels, who was a veteran at the time. We brought the family here. They had a ceremony. And, this has just been a process. And I don't know how much one community can take. First and foremost, to know that there remains, and then to say I reject this notion of reparations, it's definitely antithetical to healing the city.
What about this image?
Yeah, when you think about this image, and I'm sure all of you know Brian Stevenson with the Equal Justice Initiative. We partnered with him and started the Tulsa Community Remembrance Coalition that I've led to go around to all of the sites where victims were murdered. And EJI was able to at least document about 40. And, he has this whole remembrance project where they've been to counties throughout the South. But of course, in cities where there were massacres, there were just multiple victims. And so I brought together a community coalition, and we got groups together, white faith leaders, and we dug and we read their obituaries. We collected soil, and we feel like we gave them a proper burial because there were so many people who were killed, dumped in mass graves, as you saw, dumped in the Arkansas River, never given a proper burial or memorial. And we felt like we wrote that wrong. In my faith, we feel that it's sinful to go to your grave without a proper burial. And so we did that together. We cried, we sang. Some of our white allies prayed prayers of repentance for their ancestors. In every single ceremony, we gave them their due. We said their names, the names that we knew, and also the unknown names. And we're hoping that all of our jars will go into a memorial that I'm building in honor of the victims. A lot of times we memorialize the businesses that were lost, but we never memorialize the people and the lives that were lost. And so these will be on display for the world to come and show deference and honor. So this story will never be erased from the history books again.
Can you talk about these folks?
Yeah, and these are the 3 last known living survivors back in, I think, the early 2000s. Raise your hand if you remember the late Professor Charles Ogletree. Wow. Yeah, he's a hero. He was the one who said, I have to do something for these survivors and represent them. And Demario Solomon Simmons was a baby attorney at the time, Professor Eric Miller and even Johnny Cochran. And they represented hundreds of survivors who were still living. And this case went to the United States Supreme Court. And when they went there, Olivia Hooker, Wes Young, Otis T. Clark, all of them were just simply given a gold medallion. And the United States Supreme Court said that the statute of limitations had run out. But I remember what Otis T. Clark said and Wes Young said. They were not defeated. They challenged us, the new generation. They said, never give up the fight. We're getting a little bit older, but we need to pass this baton, and I need for you all to keep fighting. And we took that challenge seriously. And so almost 20 years later, 2021, I believe it was, Demario Solomon Simmons filed another lawsuit with these 3 survivors who were living. Uncle Red, we call him, Hughes Van Ellis. We lost him at the age of 102 back in October, or the October before last. But he was very creative because, of course, you all know as lawyers, you can't bring the same case up twice. So he used a public nuisance statute to actually file a lawsuit on behalf of the victims or the survivors, saying that the massacre caused a public nuisance and the harm has not stopped. And he used the analogy of an oil spill. How do you get rid of an oil spill? How do you stop the harm of an oil spill? Well, you have to clean it up. And for almost 100 years, the oil spill has not stopped here in Tulsa. The through line is Terrence Crutcher. The through line is the structural racism that we'll talk a little bit about later. But these survivors, I had the honor and privilege of traveling with them all over 100 to the United States Congress, and they testified before the House Judiciary Committee. And it was so powerful in that room. I mean, in front of everybody. Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz. I mean, we were like, are they getting ready to go hard at these old people? And believe it or not, they acknowledged that this should have never happened. And they showed deference to Uncle Red, who was a World War II veteran. And he said, please don't let me die like the other survivors without getting justice. And unfortunately, we lost him to cancer. And I had the opportunity to testify as well as a descendant. But these are some of the most powerful living legends. Mother Randall, Mother Fletcher, strong women. They've been in and out of courtrooms. They never complained. They sat for 8 hours at a time. And they said, we're not going anywhere. And so how dare we complain when these women are 105, 6, 7, 8. And I said, just as long as they are living, I will continue to fight. And this is when they were 105. They are 110 and 11. I'm like, wow, they may outlive us all. And so they are just amazing.
So Dick Rowland was trying to assault a young white woman in 1921. And the massacre was justified because of that. He attacked a white woman. And the white people in Tulsa just reacted like any other white people would react. Terrence Crutcher made a police officer afraid by having his hands in the air and walking away from her. So she shot him dead. And he deserved it. Those narratives are almost exactly the same, and they're more than 100 years apart. And this is part of what I want to emphasize is your clients of color are bringing this shit into your office every single time they come in. Every black person in America has had experiences like this. And when they come into your office, they are thinking this criminal legal system is here, pardon my French, to fuck me over. And if what they get from us is, oh, don't worry, no, we're not going to talk about race, they won't like that, so we're going to do it this way. If what they get from us is, I'm not going to acknowledge that there's even a problem, can you understand why some people in our community say, I have no trust in this system whatsoever? And so part of our job is not to give them trust in the system, but to let them know that we understand what this system is and that we are willing to push back against it.
And I like, Jeff, what you said about, we can't turn away from this thing called race. When we were filing our petition and preparing, we had a 50, 60-page petition. And we were trying to show the practice and pattern of Tulsa's police department and all of the hyper-policing in North Tulsa and all of the victims who were black that have been killed by Tulsa's police department. We even put in there that the Black Officers Coalition had to file a lawsuit because of the discrimination within Tulsa's police department. And some of the lawyers on our team, believe it or not, said, hey, trim this petition down. You just need to focus on Betty Shelby. Quit making it about race. And I promise you, you will win. You will get a quick settlement and we can move on from this.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, Dad and I, we may push back and forth on this because Dad is weary right now because, it's been almost a decade and we probably could have settled the case and got a small settlement, but it wasn't about the money. It was about transforming the system. And I hate to use the word reform because means to do again. I don't want to do this crap anymore. I want to transform it, disrupt it, break it down and build it back up with something better. And so they told us, quit making it about race and then you will get what you want.
And that's the biggest lie that's ever been told, because we have not been making it about race for the past 150 years. And look where we are. Black Wall Street was burned to the ground by a white mob who believed black people did not deserve to lift themselves out of the economic legacy of enslavement. And Terrence Crutcher was murdered on his way home from enrolling at Tulsa Community College. And the president of that college, Dr. Lee Goodson, said he had openly expressed to our advisement staff and to others his desire to be successful in college. No one was prosecuted for the massacre, not one person. And no one was convicted for the murder of Terrence Crutcher. I want to talk about Tyrie Nichols and Memphis, Tennessee, because we are talking about a through line to today. What does that image say to you? Is there anything about this image that makes you feel peaceful, comfortable, safe? Street crimes operations to restore peace in our neighborhoods. This was the Memphis Police Department team that beat Tyrie Nichols to death, the Scorpion team. And you know, names actually mean something. And when you look at the way our law enforcement across the country has named their like policies or the things they're trying to do, President Trump just said, I'm going to unleash police. No video here, but if you have not seen the video of what happened to Tyrie Nichols and you are a criminal defense lawyer, I want to suggest to you, unless it is just personally impossible, you have an obligation to watch this video. You have an obligation to watch it. And I ain't talking anything about, the officers were acquitted, they were convicted of the federal charges, acquitted of the state charges. I care about it, but I don't care about that for these purposes. What I care about is the message that is sent to the black community, the message that is sent to your clients of color, which is, you don't mean shit. This is one of the most frightening videos I have seen in the last 10 years. It's really short. I want to give Homeboy credit because you'll see in a minute. Watch the reflection. He actually hit that shot. It went in. This happened on June 11th, 2020. And when his parents asked him, why did you hide behind the car when the police car drove by? And he said, they just killed a black man in Minnesota. I don't want to be next. This is what black children in America are growing up with. And when they come into your offices, into our offices, looking for representation, we've got to understand this.
And Jeff, I just have to share that story is not unique. I want to share a quick story. After Terrence was killed, and this was before this video, I was taking Terrence Jr., his son, and some of my little cousins to the movies. And we left the movies. It was dark. And a police officer pulled up behind me with the sirens and the lights. I pulled over, and Terrence Jr. and my little cousins were screaming hysterically. And I asked, what is wrong? Why are you all screaming? And he said, I don't want to get shot like my daddy. And the police officer came up, and I'm staying calm for the kids while my heart is pounding, and my hands are on 10 and 2. And he said, and I was in a rental car because I was home from Alabama. He said, I just want you to turn your lights on, your headlights on so you can get home safe. That's all it was. But the mere thought of being pulled over with little black boys in the car and the trauma at the age, and they were just 5 and 6, it broke my heart. And so that's not unique. It happens all the time.
I've got this bad habit. I won't admit it anywhere else, but I am not a good driver. And I will frequently get stopped by police. And one of the things I noticed a couple of years ago is if I would get stopped by a police officer, when I got home, I would have 2 drinks. And it's like, I started thinking about it, and it was because I was scared shitless. And I'm about to turn 69 years old. And people who are young enough to be my grandchildren can walk up to the car, ask for my license and registration, and I'm calling them sir. Yes, sir. Can I give this to you, sir? And then they leave, and I'm just pissed off. And I'm like, why am I so angry? This is something that every black parent in America deals with. I would just ask, of the white people in the room, how many of you have had conversations with your children about how not to get killed by a police officer? And there's some. How about the black people in this room? Virtually every single hand. And I'm just saying, if you are raising a black child, imagine that. Somebody you love and your responsibility to raise them and keep them safe. And they say, I'm going out tonight, we're going to a party. Are you going to have the same concerns if your white child gets stopped by a police officer? This is just what the woman earlier said. If we can't admit that race is a problem, we can't even have a conversation about this. And there's so many people that want to say it's not a problem anymore. This is 2025. We're all beyond that. Well, here's what came out of the Tyrie Nichols trial. What they did on that video was 100% consistent with Memphis Police Department standards and 100% consistent with accepted law enforcement standards. An expert testified to this. Nichols never punched, kicked, or attacked the officers in any way. In the first minute when he was stopped, get the fuck out of the fucking car. When he's out of the car, I didn't do anything, he says. Then they say, get on the fucking ground when he's already on the ground. That's in the first minute. In the second minute, pepper sprayed repeatedly, and they attempted to use a stun gun on him. He is laying on the ground, and when they pepper sprayed him, they pepper sprayed the officers who were on top of him. And that's how he was able to get up and run. And one of the officers who was pepper sprayed, this is what he had to say as he was rinsing his eyes out. I hope they stomp his ass. And they did. Why did he run? Marquise Weeks, football player at the University of Virginia, returns a kickoff for 100 yards for a touchdown. He's interviewed after the game. How did you do that? That was just instinct, kind of like running from the cops. When I saw this in Sports Illustrated, I was laughing. I was like, ha, ha, ha. And it wasn't funny anymore. Why would an innocent black man run from the police? Why would that happen? The Massachusetts Supreme Court in Commonwealth versus Warren had this to say. Such an individual, a black man, might just as easily be motivated by the desire to avoid the recurring indignity of being racially profiled as by the desire to hide criminal activity. And I promise you, the indignity of being racially profiled is nothing compared to getting your ass stomped. Drugs were found in the car, and they said, well, he was probably on drugs. In fact, one of the narratives was he had super strength because he was on drugs. It was psilocybin mushrooms, which don't cause any kind of super strength. That was in his car, but there was none of it in his system. And an agent from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation testified. One of the cops took 11 cell phone videos of him after the second beating, took the pictures, sent it out to people, and then had conversations about it. The New York Times did this analysis of the entire video. And they said 71 commands issued in the 13-minute period between Nichols being stopped and the cops radioing in and saying he's finally in custody. The orders were often simultaneous and contradictory. They ordered him to show his hands when they were holding his hands. They told him to get on the ground when he was already on the ground. And they ordered him to reposition his body when they were holding his body. And these people were found not guilty. And that's fine. But if your clients of color are coming into your office, this is what they're bringing with them. And if we say, hey, race isn't going to matter, it's not going to happen here. We don't have any racism here. If you're giving them that message that it doesn't matter, that you don't need to worry about it, you're giving them a lie. We are giving them a lie, and we just can't do that. This is what the Memphis Police Department put out publicly. January 7, 2023, 8:30 p.m., officers attempted to make a traffic stop for reckless driving. The head of the Memphis Police Department said the day after this murder, we have looked at the tapes. There is no evidence of reckless driving whatsoever. As the officers approached the vehicle, a confrontation occurred. That's what they called it, a confrontation. Then they pursued the suspect and took him into custody. And there was another confrontation. Then he complained of having shortness of breath, and they took him to the hospital. This is what the Memphis Police Department said to the community in Memphis and to the country about this is what happened with Tyrie Nichols. And everyone in the black community knows that the incredible level of lying about this. And all of us in this room know police officers. I'm not trying to say every police officer is a horrible person. They are willing to lie, and they are damn sure willing to lie about whether racism had anything to do with their behavior on a particular occasion. I want to say this real quickly. There were black officers in Memphis. So what does that mean? Does that mean it wasn't racism? Doesn't mean a goddamn thing. Oppressed people from any place in the world, some members of an oppressed group have always collaborated with the oppressors. That's why Jewish people had to prosecute other Jewish people for collaborating with the Nazis. This isn't about the color of those police officers' skin. This is about the culture of policing. And if you are black, white, green, or brown, if you are in police departments, you are exposed to that culture. And there are a whole lot of people that will say, I'm down with it. I will go right along with it. This is what the issue is. And this, in this book about the Israelis prosecuting people who were Nazi collaborators, this quote stood out to me. The condition of the offended does not exclude culpability. Oppression does not sanctify victims. So Tyrie Nichols made the police angry, and he may have committed drug crimes or property crimes in the past. So he got what he deserved. And what was taken from him was everything he was and everything he was ever going to be. Nobody prosecuted for the massacre. No conviction for the murder of Terrence Crutcher. And what happened to Tyrie Nichols was not murder. This is 1921 to 2025, and here we are. Assume black people are criminals. Treat them violently without justification, and the system will take care of you. This is the message from the Tulsa Massacre, from the murder of Terrence Crutcher, and from the killing and murder of Tyrie Nichols. That is why NACDL has a Race Matters conference. I'm going to go through this stuff without, actually, because we're almost out of time, I got to show you this, though. In terms of what we do in America, all of y'all are familiar with the Prison Policy Institute. They did a study, and they said, assume every state in the United States is a country, and then the country as well. So you have 51 countries, the 50 states of the United States in a whole. And then they said, we're going to look at all the countries in the world that have more than 100,000 people. And we're going to look at their incarceration rates. Number 1 through 39. And the United States, you won't be able to read the names, but the United States is in blue. Here's number 1 through 39. You don't even get another country until 36. And that country is El Salvador. And the country at 38 is Turkmenistan. How about 40 through 60? Look at that incarceration here in this country. And when it comes to race and incarceration, you maybe can't see this, but it's saying black people are about 14% of the country and Latino people are about 19%. Look at the incarceration. Those two groups make up 60% of the people incarcerated in this country. It ain't a mistake. And we can't tell our clients, don't worry about race. It doesn't matter. It's not going to impact your case.
And really quick, I just want to shout out Jane St. Pierre. Where are you? With Still She Rises. Stand up right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You got to clap. I mean, I would be remiss if we didn't recognize the phenomenal work that Still She Rises is doing right here in Tulsa at a criminal defense conference. And then Francie Echoer, are you here? Where are you? Francie, just stand up. She moved away from Oklahoma. We're sad, but she's been doing work in Oklahoma City. I want to recognize you all. Because they have been on the front lines supporting clients in Oklahoma, and you all know how treacherous Oklahoma has been with mass incarceration. We were number 1 for women for a long time. I think we dropped to number 2 now? We're number 4 now. Wow, that's progress. And blacks are disproportionately affected, and so I just want to just acknowledge the work that you all do every single day for our state.
This is what we want to leave you with. To refuse to participate in the shaping of our future is to give it up. Don't be misled into passivity, either by false security. They don't mean me. They're not coming for me. I can put my head down and not look at what's happening, and they won't see me. Because we'll be next. False security or by despair. There's nothing we can do. Each of us must find our own work and do it. And if you are here doing the work of a criminal defense lawyer in NACDL, there is no more honorable work. And there is no better way to address the systemic racism that infects our country and shows its face very brightly in the criminal legal system. Our work is critically important. And here's the thing, if we don't do it, nobody's going to do it. Absolutely nobody is going to do it. You can't read these, but you've got your schedule and your agenda. These are all of the people that are going to be teaching at this conference, giving tools and strategies for us to be able to address racism in the courtroom. Again, I just want to applaud NACDL for doing this for 8 straight years. And quite frankly, they're going to need to do it for another 8 straight years and probably 8 after that. This is the long game. If you're looking for a solution that comes right away, you're looking in the wrong place. It ain't going to work like that. This is the long game that we've got to play, and your clients, everybody in this room knows this. We have no freaking idea who we're representing. We could be representing the cure for cancer. We could be representing the next great politician in the country. We could be representing somebody that's going to make incredible music. We have no idea who we're representing. And if we keep that in mind, the ability to raise these issues and the willingness to raise these issues, I think will be there for us. I need you to listen to this. Everybody in this courtroom knows about Batson versus Kentucky. And everybody in this room knows that it's like one of the most useless Supreme Court decisions that was ever decided because it didn't do anything to stop racism in the courtroom, in jury selection. I didn't know how this issue was preserved until it's been several years now, until I heard this podcast. James Batson had to preserve his own error because his lawyer said it's a long-standing rule. He can do that. He can excuse whoever he wants. And I guarantee you, if you take some of the things taught at this seminar this week and you go back to your jurisdiction and you start doing them, you will hear the exact same thing. It's not the way we do things here. This is not going to help your client. You're not helping your client, counsel. There's no racism here. I don't know why you're raising this. Maybe your boss gets a call from the judge saying, is your office doing this kind of litigation now? What's going on? And if you have a black prosecutor, get ready. Are you accusing me of being a racist? How dare you accuse me of doing that? Everybody will get nervous because you're going to be speaking the truth, a truth that many people in this country have no interest in hearing. And when you scare people by speaking a truth that they don't want to hear, all kinds of things can happen. What I have to say to you is this. What's the worst thing a judge can do to you? And if you say, well, I'm not worried about me, but he's going to screw over my client. Is your client getting screwed over now? What is it you're afraid of? How bad is it going to get? And if you raise an issue like this, and you raise it with power, and you raise it with authority, a judge is going to have to listen, and maybe the first judge will say no, and maybe the second judge will say no, and maybe the fifth and sixth judge will say no, and maybe the ninth judge will say yes. And what happens then when the floodgates get opened? How many people in here remember when you could not do jury selection in federal court? Only the judge could ask questions in federal court. I guess I see a couple of hands. Maybe I'm older than I think. But that shows you the change. Lawyers do voir dire in federal court. Hey, that's fine. But all over the country, you're not getting it everywhere. And how did that happen? Lawyers stood up and said, I want to do this. And judges said, no, we don't do that here. That's not the way we do it. And lawyers kept standing up and kept standing up. And finally, some judge said, okay, just go ahead and do it. So the willingness to raise these issues and make judges confront them is what this seminar is really about. And Gerald came up and told me that we've got more time than I thought. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go back and get a couple of other things that we wanted to talk about. And I'm going to start here. This is from the Prison Policy Initiative. What is the narrative about crime in America today? Going up, completely out of control. Oh my God, it's like we're being invaded by criminals. In 2024, just last year, we were at the lowest crime rate in America since 1961. And this ain't it ain't me saying this, it's the frickin' FBI. It's their statistics. The lowest crime rate since 1961. And yet the narrative is completely different. And when you think about that, why is a narrative about crime different than the facts? It's because that narrative is allowing things to happen that could not be justified if we looked at the facts of what's actually happening with crime. Who goes to prison? Everybody knows that there is economic inequality between white communities and black communities in America, and that has lasted for the last 150 years, and it hasn't gotten any better. Everybody knows that. So who ends up going to prison? Well, I'm just going to read these because I know you can't see them. 33% of the people in prison had a parent that was incarcerated. 18% were in foster care before they were 18 years old. 12% were homeless before they were 18 years old. 19% lived in a family where they lived in subsidized or public housing before 18 years old. 42% had a family that received public assistance before they were 18 years old. 62% did not graduate from high school, and 68% were arrested before they were 19. This is who goes to jail. And the economics that are displayed here factor into that wealth gap between white and black America. It's not surprising that we make up a tiny 14% of the population and 41% of the imprisoned population, because these narratives about money, about economic ability are right there at the heart of the problem. And Tiff, I know you have something.
Yeah. And when you think about just Tulsa specifically, the city put out an equality indicators report. And of course, I focused on the justice indicator, and there were 4 indicators, one being use of force, adult arrest, youth arrest, and I think hiring practices within Tulsa's police department. And for use of force, blacks in Tulsa, when they launched this, I think it was 2018, were 5 times more likely to be victims of use of force. And 3.5 times more likely to be arrested, and black youth were 2.5 times more likely than our white counterparts to be stopped and frisked or arrested without probable cause. And so every year since 2018, we've looked at that justice indicator, and it started out as a F grade. I think 32% or maybe a little bit higher. Now it has went down every single year. The grade has gotten lower. So is there such thing as a F minus? And so, when we talk about crime, we believe that it's a social construct, and we believe that homelessness, poverty, being black has been criminalized here in Tulsa. And we partnered with the Human Rights Watch, and they came to Tulsa after Terrence was killed and did a report called Get on the Ground. You all can look that up. And they came here, they released a report, and just the data is damning. And of course, it's really difficult to get real, authentic data. It's so flawed. And CBS just did a story on Tulsa this past September around the anniversary of Terrence's killing, where they interviewed the Tulsa's police chief. I was on the interview, and we talked about transparency. We talked about data, and the police chief, the current police chief, said, "Don't judge us by what we've done in the past. Judge us by the future." So forget about Terrence Crutcher. Forget about all the people we're arresting. Forget about all the homeless people and the people that's suffering mental illness that we're killing. Forget about what we've done in the past. Judge us by what we do in the future. And, that report showed that transparency was lacking. And it's just really, really difficult. And so we have a problem when, these police agencies across the country, they tout that they're the best and that we have data-driven approaches. But the report is an F. You have an F grade. And in Tulsa and Oklahoma, right before Kristen Clark just left, they actually, I think, pinged Oklahoma for being some of the deadliest, Oklahoma City and Tulsa, deadliest police forces in the nation, like in the top 10. And so that is what we're doing. We're advocating, and the new mayor has been working alongside us now, where we're trying to divert 911 from TPD. And we're getting somewhere, and we've just embedded mental health service providers in the 911 call center, and we've been able to divert, I think, at least 700 calls away from police officers, and we've been able to provide the most appropriate responses and services. And so that is some work that we've been working on in partnership with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and it's really a good thing when the mayor will support the work that the advocates are doing on the ground. And he actually allocated $1 million to do a test case on ART. And it's not perfect, because we're dealing with the state, too, who's cutting mental health funding across the board. We're okay for this year, but we don't know what's going to happen next year. And so, we're seeing that all across the country, just cuts. And what will that do? Mm-hmm. That will actually end up filling back up our jails and our prisons, because, we're not going to have the services that we need. And so we're fighting rigorously, at the Capitol, and every single day there's just laws being passed that continue to do harm and marginalize poor people, Black people, indigenous people, LGBTQIA. And so, we're really working hard in Oklahoma.
I just, and for me, the wonderful thing about hearing this, despite all the struggles, is you said when your twin brother was killed that his name isn't going to be a hashtag. That's not all it's going to be. And what the Crutcher Foundation has done is a hell of a lot more than a hashtag.
Yeah.
And so I think we can look at this as an example of wading into a battle that is really difficult, where it doesn't look like there's going to be any chance or hope for success, but you do it because it's the right thing to do. And you never know when a judge is going to have their head turned, or a jury have their head turned and say, wait a minute, this is just not right. I want to just talk about narrative just a little more. And look, we are where we are. And so dealing with, I will say the name, the Trump administration. And let's remember, in his executive order, President Trump said, I am going to unleash police departments. And here's what you can take to the bank, police officers. With me in the White House, you will have a president that has your back. We should focus on that. But my point is, this is not about Republican or Democrat. Unfortunately, this is about America, about the United States of America. And there is no better example than that, of that.
They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heal.
Bring them to heal. Let me tell you this. When subhuman language is used to describe individuals, the subhuman treatment is coming right behind it. Right behind it. And this is Hillary Clinton of the Democratic Party saying, treat these young black people like dogs, because that's who you bring to heal is your dog. And the way you bring your dog to heal is by training it. So this narrative is not just the demon of the far right. This narrative is throughout the political spectrum in our country, and we just need to be aware of that.
The CLE verification code for this program is R7Q002. R7Q002.
The presence of law enforcement in schools is justified by cultural assumptions about children of color, as the Black Crime Association also surfaces in the classroom for young black boys and girls. Black boys and girls experience hypersexualization and adultification, denying them the innocence of youth that we allow other children because of prevailing stereotypes. Oh, he's just a kid. It doesn't, let's not make a big deal out of it if he's 13 and white with blonde hair and blue eyes. If he's 13 and looks like me, he's a potential super predator. We got to deal with him now and deal with him sternly so it doesn't go any further. Tiffany, where did this analysis come from?
Yeah, this analysis came from our report. You will read it in our Generational Vision for Justice and Liberation. But we've just seen this just here current day recently. And if you read that report, and I got triggered by Hillary Clinton because our mayor, the former mayor, did the same thing. It's just been harm after harm after harm. He went on CBS Sunday Morning News and all but said Terrence committed suicide and said that his killing wasn't about race. It was about the insidious use of drugs. And that's what we see over and over with people who say they care, with people that we vote on and people we support. And so, here in Tulsa right now, our schools are school to prison pipelines, and our public schools are being starved by the Oklahoma legislature. And what do you get? The community violence. How many of you worked with orgs that had community violence initiatives and the funding got stripped a few weeks ago? Any of you? Well, our funding got stripped here in Oklahoma. I know Oklahoma City and our technical assistance. And so, you know, we're on the front lines of every single indicator, whether it's education, whether it's mental illness, policing reform. And you will read about all of this in the report. I won't go over it for you, but it came from that report, Jeff.
And that report is in the materials that you'll have.
The CLE verification code for this program is R7Q002. R7Q002.
The reality that we are facing is easy to turn away from. This is just human nature. It's not like being good people or bad people, but it is easy to turn away from difficult, ugly things because we don't want to deal with it. That's just a human reaction. And it doesn't mean anybody's a good or bad person. But it is so critical to understand what is on the shoulders of our clients of color when they come into this system. This system, as we have seen it, is set up to do something to them. And it ain't justice. And so where does the hope come from our clients? Where do our clients get hope about trying to navigate this system and come out the other side of it still in one piece? Quite frankly, they get it from us because there's no place else for them to look, right? Where else are they going to get it from? And so again, it is why what's going on here for the next 2 days and the skills that are going to be taught by these wonderful lawyers is just so important. This is the system that we are asking people of color to trust. This is the system that we're saying, if you get in it, don't worry, you'll be treated fairly. Black parents are keenly aware of the impact of these stereotypes. And this parent, Candy Whitley White, said, my zip code would imply my son belongs in the back of a police car and not just a teenager riding a bike around the neighborhood. Is there anybody here from Milwaukee? I know Deja Vishny is going to teach, but I don't see any hands from Milwaukee. There was a report out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin about a zip code and the number of arrests, the number of violent police encounters in that zip code. And it was off the charts. And it was in the blackest area in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This, I'm going to ask Tiffany to comment on. This was published in an Oklahoma newspaper not too long ago. And it is the narrative of, oh, that shit was a long time ago. We're past that now. Everything's fine. And it is the focus only on individual accountability. And look, I got no problem with holding individuals accountable for their behavior, but I got a problem with how we define that. Oklahoma's history undeniably includes shameful treatment of minorities, but those acts are now history in every sense of the word. The data largely demonstrates the impact of personal choices. State policies don't force police to drop out of school, smoke, or become obese. No one forces an individual to commit a crime. Business owners aren't eager to hire ex-cons of any color. Problems are real, but they're often the result of personal choices, not racism. Racism is done.
I like that. Yeah, thank you. Say it louder. You know, there was Officer Major Yates around this time that this statement came out, and he said, based on the data, we should be shooting more young black men. I don't know if you remember that statement. Mm-hmm. And, you know, to just say that this is about an individual choice, it further indicts and validates what we're talking about here today. And, you know, when you go to Greenwood and when you see those infamous railroad tracks that divided back in 1921, the white Tulsans from black Tulsans, those railroad tracks are still there today, and they still symbolize the same thing, and that's the racial divide.
Can I just say this, Tiffany?
Yeah.
I was coming to see you yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm in an Uber, And the Uber driver says, I've just been here about 3 or 4 years, but I got to tell you, you see these railroad tracks coming up? It's like a completely different city on the other side of those railroad tracks, and I haven't figured out why.
Yeah, and so, you know, when you think about 1921, Greenwood, Black Wall Street was thriving. It was an economic enterprise. I mean, the black dollar circulated time and time again. We had everything from doctors, lawyers, restaurants, haberdasheries, movie theaters. I mean, you name it, we had it. People didn't even know that they were one generation removed from slavery. I mean, they were millionaires. We had hotels with chandeliers. The trains would come to Greenwood and people would get off and just enjoy and have a good time. Now here we are 100 years later. Again, those railroad tracks symbolize the racial divide, except now when you go north of those tracks, we have a food desert. We live in a food desert. We have one grocery store that is small, one quality grocery store, and it's the first time that we've had one in 10 years that they just built Oasis.
Think obesity has something to do with your diet and what kind of food you're able to eat?
Yeah, and so the proliferation of Dollar Generals and Family Dollars next door, and we know that 80% of the products in those stores are toxic. We have no sidewalks, no civic infrastructure. You know, you just heard the poem about the little black boys. Shortly after George Floyd, in our community, 2 little black boys were pulled over and they were just walking in their neighborhood, the street that they lived on, that didn't have sidewalks, cited for jaywalking. The gang task force unit, slammed them to the ground. One of the little boys was screaming for his mother. The officer had him in a chokehold. They released the footage. And it was so triggering. Jaywalking in their neighborhood, no sidewalks. And so this is what we're talking about. Individual choices. Our schools are school to prison pipelines. Our black and brown kids are hyper disciplined. We have no street lights. There's a stat that says that if you just turn on the lights in a neighborhood, it can bring down this social construct of crime by 36%. We have a campaign right now called Just Turn on the Lights. You know, why is it so dark in our communities? I can go on and on and on. And you say it's about personal choices. And now our community is just ridden with flock safety cameras. And an article just came out locally saying crime is down. And it's because of the surveillance. It's because of the cameras. And so, this is what we're fighting day in and day out. These systems of confinement, these systems of surveillance. And we talk about that in our report. And when you look at this picture right here, and I have to talk about the trifecta of my lived experience in the real time, simultaneous legal battles that my family is in, whether it's justice for Greenwood, and we went to the Oklahoma Supreme Court, dismissed our case, and now we have a mayor, whether it's the fight for Terrence Crutcher, where we just left the 10th Circuit. This is a bus of descendants of Creek freedmen. My 2-time great-grandfather, Jesse Norris, was a Creek freedman. Our family came here on the Trail of Tears as enslaved Africans. And we finally got a court date because in 1977, they kicked the freedmen out of the tribe based on their constitution, violating the treaties. And we believe that the treaties of 1866 is the supreme law of the land. And so since 1977, families of Creek freedmen descent, we've been fighting, and we finally got a court date a few years ago, and we traveled down to the Muskogee Creek Nation courthouse, and we packed a bus full of Black Creeks. And when we arrived, we were met with hostility. This is one of the officers saying, "We don't want you here." They brought the light horse police, maybe about 2 dozen. I have pictures. And this was on the anniversary of Rosa Parks refusing to give her seat up on the bus. And we were getting off the bus, and I stared him in the face and in the eyes, and I said, we're not going anywhere. We had elders with us. It was very cold outside. The light horse police, they were all lining the front door of a public courthouse, and they said we couldn't use their bathrooms. And so we went in anyway. I said, I want to talk to who's in charge. He said, okay, follow me. Everybody followed me. And we stood around the sill, and I said, you all, we're going to sit down on this floor, and we're not going to move. We're not going anywhere. And so when you think about this trifecta and the intersections of these fights at the same time, and actually Muskogee Creek judge ruled in our favor, and the chief of the Creek Nation, and I know the mayor's trying to build relationships, but we can't build relationships with people who practice anti-black racism, period. And so we're going to keep our new mayor honest as well. And y'all can clap for that. We're going to keep him honest. And on June the 10th, we will be at the Muskogee Creek Nation Supreme Court fighting to reinstitute our rights and our citizenship. And if we do, you all, that is instant reparations. That's instant benefits, instant health care, instant education, instant everything. And as I close, these will be my final words. This is Terrence Jr. This is my twin brother's son, and he's the spitting image of Terrence, and he's at a vigil for his dad. And he has his fist up, and it makes me sad and it makes me angry that this little boy has to even be on the front lines holding up his fist. And we've talked about a lot of the racism. We've talked about the structural racism. We talked about this system, and I just don't believe the system was ever designed to work for little boys like Terrence Jr. But as Thurgood Marshall said, we have to make the system work for us. And we have to believe in the idea of America and the idea of this Declaration of Independence, where it says when any form of government becomes destructive of its means, it is the right of the people to organize its powers and institute new government. And that is what we're doing at the Terrence Crutcher Foundation. And my father, as co-founder, we decided to start this foundation to honor Terrence's legacy and I'm sorry, I get a little bit emotional, to honor his legacy. And we founded this foundation on the principle of agape love, loving people in spite of, looking beyond faults and meeting needs through all of our initiatives. But what we've learned through this generational vision, we understand that we've passed the baton generation to generation. And Martin Luther King said every generation has the responsibility to address the needs of its time. And we have the baton right now, but I'm tired of fighting. I too have a dream like Martin Luther King. And this generational vision is a vision where I envision this little boy right here, that one day he will be able to truly walk outside free. And he won't be pulled over in his neighborhood because of structural racism. I have a dream that one day Terrence Jr. will be able to play in a park with a toy gun as a little boy and not be deemed a super predator and shot down like Tamir Rice. I have a dream that one day Terrence will be able to grow up, because I'm afraid right now, but I dream that he'll be able to grow up, and he just turned 13, but he's going to be 16 soon. I want him to get his driver's license, but I hope that if he's pulled over because of a broken tail light, he won't be gunned down like Philando Castile. Have a dream that he's going to grow up and go to college and get his own apartment and be able to sit down on his sofa and eat a bowl of ice cream and not be gunned down like Botham Jean. I hope that one day he'll be able to come over to his aunt's house, Aunt Tiffany's house, and play video games with me. And I won't be shot dead through a window like a Tatiana Jefferson. I want for Terrence to be able to run like Ahmaud and not be killed. That is the vision. That is the generational vision I have for every little black boy and every little black girl. And Terrence Crutcher's blood has been a catalyst for change, and I made that promise, and his last words to me where that God is going to get the glory out of my life. I didn't know what it meant, but I believe that every moment, every battle that we fought, every obstacle, and in this moment right here talking to you all is living proof of Terrence's life getting the glory. And it is my dream and my generational vision that Terrence Jr. will be able to walk outside free. And so I'm just grateful to be here and to share my story and our heart with each and every one of you. Don't give up the fight. Race matters. It matters. It matters. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm going to end pretty quick here, and we may go a couple of minutes over, but just a couple. The NACDL has done fantastic things in its existence, and one of the best things it ever did was to partner with the American Civil Liberties Union to provide lawyers to represent the 5 men at Guantanamo Bay who were charged with the 9/11 attacks. And I was one of the lawyers in 2008 that went down to Gitmo in the first military commission to represent. My client was Ammar al-Baluchi. He's the nephew of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and was one of the 5 people charged in the 9/11 attacks. So before you go to Gitmo, we had to get security clearances. And then we're sitting in an all-day seminar with psychiatrists and psychologists. And what they told us was this: you have represented some of the most traumatized people in the United States. You may understand how to deal with trauma. You have never represented anybody that's been systematically tortured, and you have no idea what you're getting into. And for the next 8 hours, they told us what we were getting into. And it was about 5 o'clock, and I'm looking at my watch thinking, why did I agree to do this? Where is the nearest bar? Because I got to pound some drinks with all this shit we've been hearing. And a lawyer from Indiana stood up, and she said, I know you feel hopeless. I know you feel like this problem is too big. And I just want to give you an example of the most human behavior that I have ever seen. And I'm going to attempt to narrate this short video, and you've probably seen it. It's called Battle at Kruger. And I'm going to attempt to narrate it the way she did.
The CLE verification code for this program is R7Q002. R7Q002.
And what she said was this: you know, we're trying to live our lives, and there's dangers all around. And when you deal with the government,
they're crouching.
It seems like when they come for people, they always come for the weakest. The people who can't defend themselves very well.
Oh my God.
And what they're going for here is the weakest, the little one,
She's going for him. She's going.
the kid.
She got him.
This
Oh, she did. She got him.
is hopeless. There is no way
Drag him out.
this baby water buffalo survives this.
Hulle is nou net 'n kleintjie gevang. Hier's lekker action hier.
And as we're representing clients who it feels like we have everything against us and them, and we're thinking it can't get any worse, it does. And if you don't see the crocodile, you will in a second. Is there anything that's more hopeless than this? The Lions have won. Have they? Because you know what Mom and Dad Water Buffalo did? They went and got the whole fucking herd. The entire herd. And they came back. And this is us sometimes thinking about that herd. We are so powerful together.
Yes.
When we can work together and collaborate with each other, It's amazing what we can do. It's amazing what the members of this organization can do. But sometimes you need somebody, just one person, to step out and say, hey, we can really do this. Just one person to give an example. And there's the one. And not finished. He's like, get the F out of here. And I swear to you, watch this thing as it's walking back. Is he strutting or what? It's like, that's right. Get out of here and don't even come back. One person steps out as an example to the rest of the group. And when that example has been given, somebody else can come along and do something even better. Like this. And now the whole herd is getting involved.
Get the line
And remember that calf? It was hopeless.
The calf's still alive. Yeah, it's not getting away. It's staying here.
What this woman told us was, that is the most human behavior I've ever seen, because they chose to act when there was no hope, because it was the right thing to do. So I want to end with this. Y'all ever heard of a band called Arcade Fire? That is one of my favorite bands, and I'm watching Saturday Night Live 2 weeks ago, and they're performing. And they come on and do this song called Year of the Snake. Google it and listen to it, I swear to God, and get the lyrics so you can understand. And they come out dressed as court jesters. And they're playing this song, and at the end of the song, the lead of the band takes his guitar, and it's like I'm watching The Who, and he's like breaking the guitar on the stage, and then he holds it up. And you see what's written across it is, the machine is broken. This is the refrain to this song that I found so powerful. I tried to be good, but I'm a real boy. My heart's full of love. It's not made out of wood. So do what is true.
You got it.
Do what is true. Don't do what you should. And this is the thing that blew me away. It's the season of change. And if you feel strange, it's probably good. Thank you very much.